And welcome to another episode of the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Today I welcome Chris Turek. Chris is a seasoned voice actor and narrator based in the United States. His extensive experience includes work in radio, commercial voiceovers, and novel narration. Welcome to the show, Chris.
My pleasure. I'm tickled pink that you would even have me today. I understand that authors are your milieu, and so I'm just glad to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited to learn a little bit about what you can do for us as writers. I love audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks daily at work. I commute a lot and drive a lot for my job, so I listen to a couple audiobooks a month. And I've never really thought about or realized what's involved until I spoke with Emery a few episodes back. She talked about your expertise and how amazing your work is.
I appreciate that. You're right about that commute. That is the most productive time for audiobook listening, I find. That is what it's all about. Most of the listening goes on during the commute to and from work. I'm happy to accompany you on your commute. And like you were saying, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes of producing an audiobook that the lay listener may not even consider.
For sure.
It's a process.
Good. Well, before we get into that, we're going to step in, we'll call it Creative's Corner, and let you tell us a little bit about yourself. Let us get to know you as a person before you get into all the fun stuff with your career.
By all means. I'm just a guy at the end of the day, really. I landed this line of work because I always joke around that I'm anonymous completely until I open my mouth. I don't ever stop hearing about it. Strangers at grocery stores, at banks, on the street, they wave hello and I say good morning, and they kind of reel
Take
back.
a second look,
And you can see me, the listeners can't. I have adopted a new look. I've grown facial hair for the first time in my life because I got tired of saying, well, boy, your voice does not match your face. And so, it just kind of, I started out in radio, fell into that, saw that medium was a bit on the decline in 2024.
Right, yes.
And tried to lend my talents, so to speak, to this venture. And it's going okay so far. It's snowballing nicely.
Good. You talk about your voice not matching your look, and I went to your website after you and I scheduled our session here, and I was like, that can't be a picture of him. It does not look at all like you sounded in the book that I listened to.
I would say it's an old picture, but it's only about a year old, actually.
You do look different, but you still don't match your voice.
Oh, well, fair enough. My disguise has failed.
I apologize.
It's okay.
Let's do a little section here that I call Fast Five. This is just helps us get to know you. I always start with, do you like coffee or tea?
I'm drinking coffee right now. However, I have researched this in my mind. Coffee in the morning, tea at night.
Okay. Yeah.
Uppers and downers.
Uppers and downers. Cat or dog?
I grew up with both. Depends on the day of the week, honestly. I don't have any pets right now. I would have to say I'm kind of in a place in my life where I could use a cat. Just something low-key, sleepy, cozy.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stage of my life I'm at. I've got plans for kids in the future, so maybe a dog might make a nice babysitter one day.
Maybe. I can tell you, as owner of both, I currently don't have a dog, but as an owner of both cats and dogs, cats are a lot less work. A good place to start. But I mean, if you grew up with it, you're probably quite used to either anyway. So,
yes, indeed.
Science fiction or fantasy, which do you prefer?
Oh, goodness. Love both. I have been so heavily inundated with fantasy lately in my life that I think I could go for some science fiction right about now.
Just to change it up? Okay.
Just as a change of pace. I love science fiction, grew up with Star Wars. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Fifth Element, starring Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Great piece of sci-fi. So yeah, let's go to outer space in the near
Okay.
future, if you don't
There you
mind.
go. Yeah. Have you narrated science fiction? A Chooser of the Slain was definitely a fantasy based novel. Have you done science fiction?
I've yet to do a science fiction project. Obviously, like you said, Chooser of the Slain, Water's a Word, Book One by the supremely talented E.S. Oliver, if I may shamelessly plug. One of my favorite projects came
Awesome.
about spring of this past year.
Hmm.
Um, I just finished up another fantasy project set in kind of another adjacent Norse world that'll be coming out very shortly. It's going through quality control.
Okay.
Um, and fantasy thrillers that are kind of modern fantasies I've done recently too. Um, yeah, lots and lots of fantasy lately. The authors
Okay.
seem to think that my voice lends well to fantasy and thrillers for some reason. Not a lot of
Interesting.
children's books going on, Keith.
No, no, not yet, eh? Hey, but
Not
you never
yet.
know. Maybe somebody will fall in love with your voice
Who
after today.
knows?
Who knows? All right. Do you use Android or iOS or prefer either?
There's a war in my household. I use Android. Have my
Okay.
entire adult life. My wife uses iOS, and we both crap on each other over it playfully. It's
I
not
hear it.
serious, but the
Yeah.
people that do take it serious seek help. It's strange. That's
It's
all I'll
the
say about that.
I like that. You know what? My wife will defer to me to do the purchasing of our phones, and we are Android based. Way back in the day when smartphones first came on
Yeah,
the market, iPhone 4. Tried the iPhone, didn't like it. I switched to Android and have been Android ever since, as my family has as well. My wife
good
and my
man.
kids.
Good
Yeah, yeah,
man.
for sure. All right. And lastly, for Fast Five, do you prefer paperbacks or ebooks?
Oh, goodness. Keith, I've never read an ebook in my life.
Is that
I
true?
mean, the closest thing I could say that would be an ebook is the PDF manuscripts that authors send me. I do all of my recording in front of a computer screen, but there's nothing like the paper on your fingers. Uh, the smell. I'm sure you've many authors have mentioned that before, but it's
Yeah,
intoxicating. It's some kind of strange subconscious aphrodisiac
yeah.
that really helps you to immerse. I could never do the Kindle thing. It's just not for me.
I'm with you. I hear you. I've tried. I don't physically read much anymore. As I said, I listen. That is my favorite. But I mean, just behind me here, I've got my collection. A lot of it is Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Peter Straub. I'll take those at the bookshelf for the feel and the smell once in a while.
There
So,
you go.
all right, everyone, that was Fast Five. And how about we jump into the interview? So, why don't you tell us how and when you got started in the business?
Well, it's a long and short story at the same time. Started out in radio, like I said, and that was, goodness gracious, 11 years ago, 2013, going on 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Had a friend of mine. We played in a band. He worked at a radio station as IT, and he said, "Help me move." And I said, "Okay." And he had another friend who worked at the radio station, and we met, shook hands, started picking up boxes, and he goes, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I'm 23 at the time, and I'm
Right.
just finishing college, as it happens, and um, just fell backwards into radio. Did that for 4 years, was not paying the bills, jumped around from
Mm-hmm.
this to that, and earlier last year, I see an ad. Well, I get mailed a community college course list, and I'm just flipping through it for a laugh
Yeah.
before I throw away the junk mail. And one of the courses is Introduction to Voiceover, and I kind of looked at it as a little bit of a sign. I missed radio. I missed using I had a microphone in the closet gathering dust.
Right.
Um, so I took that course, got a little training, and they said, "Well, now's the part where you start your own business." And I said, "Oh, geez." So, um, yeah, I'm getting that off the ground now. And most of my traction has been through audiobook narration.
Okay.
Um, Authors and I seem to have compatible personalities. Things are meshing well. Uh, the world of narrating commercials or promos, a little more cutthroat and a little more cold and impersonal. There's a warmth to authors, and they seem to have a more humanity to them than sort
Well,
of the marketing world.
yeah, I mean, you're nurturing our babies, if I can say, right? So we're leaving that in your possession. So I can see that we would be more into a relationship versus commercials.
Yeah, yeah, and I do treat each book as a baby. You cradle
Mm,
it, you nurture it, you never ever abuse it because it means a lot to the person who
yeah,
created it.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
there are authors out there with horror stories, narrators who basically hijack their book and make edits, and there's insanity out there, just like any other job.
This is probably the only time I'll ask you about commercials and promos, but do you have like, is there an outfit that you go through to find jobs, or is it people reach out to you? How does that work?
It is, how can I put this nicely?
Hmm.
There's very little structure. You're just
Ah,
kind of set free, and you have to discover. There's no established how to,
no,
which is frustrating for people who like structure and order, like myself. I don't like
yeah,
having to dig every little detail out of the ether. Um, there are websites for aspiring voice actors to join. They're subscription based, and
hmm.
they're not free,
Right,
unfortunately. So
right,
you're
yeah,
you're ostensibly paying to audition for clients amidst hundreds of other people. It's not my preferred method. Um,
hmm.
the other way to go about things is to basically market yourself and cold call or
Okay,
cold email rather.
yeah,
Um, that's another daunting thing because you kind of feel like you're shouting into the void a little bit. A lot of those go unanswered, and it's just it's like fishing, really. Every now and
yeah,
again, you can reel something in. Sometimes it's a boot, and sometimes it's a beautiful big mouth bass.
gotcha.
Um, I find, particularly for audiobook narration, I go through a platform called ACX. That's how I met Emery, E.S. Oliver, the wonderful author you had on a few weeks ago. It's basically Audible's production suite online, connecting
Okay,
authors to narrators, and Audible and Amazon, I believe, as well. They're kind of
yeah,
one.
they're kind of, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I go through that. There are other audiobook firms out there which are a little more kind of snooty and exclusive. I hate to
Okay,
say that. ACX will take anybody,
anybody,
self-published, professionally published. Well, they try to focus on self-published authors, independent authors.
right? Okay,
Um, just Google audiobook production and you'll see there's a thousand. But ACX is where kind of
you
I
hang your
find
hat.
myself having the traction.
Okay, okay, and ACX, would they require your book to be published with them, ebook and written, before they will match us with a narrator? Do you know?
Generally, I think that's the case.
Hmm.
I'm not super familiar with the author side of the
No,
site.
that's
There's
fair.
most authors before we start working together do have either a digital or print copy floating around on Amazon, and then
Gotcha.
we kind of marry that into the Audible component.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I come
Yeah.
in.
That's fair. Okay. Good to know. All right. You've nailed down an author who's going to entrust their book with you. You wake up this morning at 8 a.m. with your coffee. What does your day look like getting going on the process? What does your day look like recording an audiobook? And I'm sure it's more than one day,
Oh
but
yes, it's
yeah,
many
yeah,
many days. Well, before let's step back in time briefly.
yeah.
Before you even land that author, there's two ways of doing so. You can either audition for a project, which is not my favorite thing to do. You're really putting yourself out there. And I find that most authors seem to have kind of a voice in their head of what they want,
Okay.
what their sound is.
Sure.
So there's a lot of hit and miss there. I like to have them come to me, which sounds a little egotistical, but that's where they kind of listen to my samples and they go, "Oh my goodness, I'm excited about this guy." And they'll shoot me a message and they'll say, "Hey, do you want to work on my book?" And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, yeah, I do.
Awesome.
So then I've landed the author, like you said.
Okay.
We go through kind of a negotiation process for compensation, and you can choose one of 3 things. You can say, hey, I'm going to pay you to do this book up front. Not up front, sorry. After it's done, just a flat fee.
Right.
You can have a percentage of the book sales, or we could do both.
Okay.
You're not generally working for free, which is a wonderful thing in
I
this
would
day and age. So you negotiate your rates. Then the author says, "Oh, well, what's your timeline look like?" And I say, "Well, you know, do you want it done fast or do you want it done right?" I never say that. That sounds really aggressive. You want to give this the time that it deserves.
Absolutely.
I mean, goodness, 90,000 word book is probably a good 9-10 hours of finished audio at the end of the day. And
Right.
to be able to capture that, that's going to take weeks and weeks, maybe even months, depending on your workload. I've done up to 4
Sure.
books at the same time. That wasn't meant to be any kind of a brag. I'm just trying to impart how busy it gets.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, you establish a timeline. Everything looks good, looks copacetic, and then you get to work. They send you a manuscript, and you upload the first 15 minutes of the book, kind of how things go. Maybe they say, I'm not sure about how you're doing this character. You can go back and revisit that
Okay.
before we move forward. But there's a 15-minute checkpoint that's due just to make sure that we actually click.
Fair. Okay.
I'm proud to say that I've never been rejected at that point. I mean, for goodness sake, just communicate with the person and be flexible.
Yeah.
And then you're off and running. After
Okay.
that, you're recording, and I mean, we can get into the real nitty gritty. I don't want to bore you or anything, but
Not at all. No, there's nothing boring about this. I'm sitting at the edge of my seat. Honestly, Chris, this is exciting just because how important I feel as an author. It's a part of the industry that was always in the back of my mind. I would love to write a book. I would love to publish a book. And I'd love to listen to my own book read by somebody else. So, there's nothing boring about what you're saying here right now.
appreciate that. Point. It's just a matter of taking it one page and one chapter at a time. You can upload chapter by chapter.
And this is all through ACX, right?
This is all through ACX. You generally communicate on there. There's a messaging feature. I find that a lot of authors tend to like to communicate outside of that. It's just easier to either email or talk on the phone, or say by happenstance you live an hour away from an author like I do with Emery.
With
That was a
Emery,
weird, freaky coincidence.
yeah. She said that you guys met just before the release, or just before you
Yes.
finished, or around that time, right?
Finished the book, and we were waiting for it to go live. Had dinner with her and her husband and my wife, and it was good times. But
That's cool.
yeah, communicate with the author. Some authors are better than others. Some authors are more hands-on. Some are more hands-off.
Yeah.
ACX generally prefers that you communicate via their messaging so that they can document your communication. And I know that sounds scary. A little 1984. It's not. It's to protect both you and the narrator should anything go wrong.
Fair.
Basically, like if someone's saying, hey, I'm not getting paid, or you can see what one another agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
If you communicate via a third-party app, there's no record for ACX to help either party out.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
then you pretty much go and you go and you go, and then you say, hey, I'm finished. And the author listens to that before we put our final seal of approval on it. They say, oh, you made a mistake at chapter 2, minute 24, 33 seconds. Okay, I'll go in and fix that.
Yeah.
Fixed it. Sounds good. And then it goes through ACX quality control to make sure your audio's up to snuff. And then hopefully and eventually it goes live after a few days.
All right. So that when you say audio is up to snuff, they have particular like levels and those kinds of things they track. Yeah.
Tech standards. There are noise floors, making sure that you have adequate silence. There's no background noise. When it goes through quality control, this is beautiful too in 2024. A real human being goes and listens to the book, the whole thing, and it either passes or it fails. So proud to say, never had one rejected yet. Fingers crossed. I'm sure now I've got one in quality control right now. I'm sure I'll get that back.
You may have jinxed yourself, right? Yeah. Well, so do you have? You're sitting in your studio now. Is that correct?
I am.
Okay, it's awesome.
Converted closet, to tell you the truth, which doesn't sound very fancy, but I stapled foam to the walls, 360 degrees of foam on the ceiling to try and dampen the noise. I'm in the basement. I mean, very few people actually have access to a professional, like Rolling Stones level of recording studio.
Yeah.
Particularly those who don't live in a major metropolitan area too. So you make your home studio and they try to get you into the smallest space possible. So yeah, I'm in a closet.
Yeah.
I think it sounds okay. Authors seem to not care.
Sounded great. Again, I listened to Chooser of the Slain. I wouldn't know if you were in a closet or in the Rolling Stone studio. And even listening now, like it's pure quality sound.
I appreciate
and I'm not an audiophile, right? I mean, I'm just stating facts. I mean,
if there are any out there, I'm sure they're scoffing. They're saying the decibel level. There's a mild echo that only robot ears can understand. No, I don't know.
Right. That's awesome that you could do that. I'll step back to last April when I started this podcast. I mean, this is all news. I started this as a learning opportunity for getting in contact with people like you and talking with authors, learning what's involved in being a writer. And I went out and bought this microphone and, okay, where am I going to set up? I'm set up in my basement. I don't have a closet or a locked room. I don't even have a door on this room. So my cats are coming, running around, and there's all kinds of different things. The furnace will cut in and stuff like that. But,
gosh, yeah.
Right.
I find you're a lucky man because the realm of podcasting seems to be much more forgiving.
For sure. Yeah.
Than this line of work, because I have to turn the furnace off every time I get in here.
Wow.
It can get sweltering in the summer, and with all this foam, it can get sweltering in the winter too. I'm insulated. So
right.
Neighbors' dogs will bark. I make sure kind of we can get that out of there. And again, the basement, try to be underground, make sure that we can lessen as much outside world as humanly possible. So.
Wow. So you worked in radio, and as I said, you have a voice for radio for sure. And there's actually a commercial on radio here. The guy says, I have a face for radio, which he's making fun of himself, right? But you're not the face that your voice portrays, that's for sure. But how did radio prepare you for what you're doing now?
I'm glad you asked. So there's a funny phenomenon in audiobook narrating. If you've ever worked with a narrator, particularly if you're paying them by the hour, they will read at a sloth-like pace so that they can kind of pad the runtime and rake in the dough. What radio kind of did was it drilled into my head that we don't want any dead air. We want minimal silence. So I don't think about it. I go with my own pace, what sounds good in my head, and I get a little heady and I say, geez, did I read that too fast? Was that kind of like an auctioneer? But I've had a lot of positive feedback from authors saying, God, I love the pacing. It's so much better. Again, not trying to brag. So much better than these other authors that just read at a snail's pace. And I'm like, I think I know why they're doing that. But radio taught me no silence, minimal silences, no dead air. Obviously, if silence is warranted, if there's a scene change or a chapter change,
of course,
put it in there. But the other thing that it taught me was to think on my feet. Radio, you have to, if you're just constantly talking, well, geez, I hope you're actually saying something. And you've got the next thing that you're going to say kind of lined up in your head, which lends itself very well to jumping from character to character, or kind of anticipating what's coming next before your eyes actually land on that line of text. which minimizes a lot of mistakes and edits and re-recording, because editing is probably my least favorite part of the
Oh, you and
job.
me both. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
tedious, and it's probably the biggest part of the job too at the end of the day. For every 1 hour spent recording, 2 hours editing maybe. So
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. And again, mine is nothing near the quality requirement that you would have in an audiobook. So I can imagine how much time you must spend listening to yourself over and over and over, right? Because I edit a lot. So,
oh yeah, you get those people that always say, I hate the sound of my own voice. Well, you better get used to it if you're in
yeah,
this line of work, because I don't even register it anymore. It's just kind
right.
of white noise to me, and I'm looking for weird breaths or swallows or mouth clicks or
Almost everything else beside your voice. Yeah,
exactly. We hear the
yeah.
voice. That's good. We want to keep that, but everything else. A fire truck drove by. We don't want that. So
Yeah, it might lend well to a certain story, I guess. But
yeah, not the fantasy ones so much.
no, no,
They
I
didn't have
guess not.
those, but yeah.
You left radio. What did you do first? What was your first gig? Was it a commercial or was it audiobook?
Oh, first gig would be a midday show on a top 40 pop station in Western Idaho. So I guess you would say commercials came first, radio promos. We were responsible, in addition to DJing, moved up to morning shows eventually, so that was cool. But in addition
Yeah.
to that, you're responsible for basically doing commercials for local businesses on the radio. They pay for advertising, and then you say, hey, come on down to Joe Schmo's Bar and Grill, located at blah 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 Main Street, and uh, sometimes the clients would pick which radio DJ they liked the best for
Oh, okay.
sound, or
Yeah.
otherwise it just kind of went into a hat and you got what you got.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, commercials first, and uh, voiceover and audiobooks within the last few years.
Gotcha. Okay. Once you left radio entirely.
Yes, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I still do the occasional radio promo freelance, but I'm not actually working inside of a radio station.
Gotcha.
I'm
Okay.
finding that fewer and fewer people are, as a matter of fact, what with
Yeah.
Spotify and all that nonsense. So,
Yeah, well, with technology, even I always wondered. I mean, I've heard radio station. I don't listen to the radio often at all. Again, I listen to audiobooks number one, and then in between, if it's a short drive or whatever, it's YouTube music. But every now and then, when you do hear, they do a lot of on-site promos and that kind of stuff, right? So they're
oh
not in the
yeah,
station anyway. So I would think that that's becoming more and more like you could do a radio show from your house with
absolutely.
technology.
I
Yeah.
could do it right now. You could stream. It's incredible. It's sad for the career
For the
broadcasters,
yeah, right.
but it's good
Like
for everybody else.
yeah, like everything, I think there technology allows us to do more, but sometimes it's at the expense of the way it used to be done, and there's always somebody affected by that.
It is. It's dog
Yeah,
eat dog, for better or worse.
it sure is. All right, so you're narrating a book. How many times would you say you read the book? So you probably read it to start, or do you just jump in and just read? So two questions, right?
Yeah.
Starting. Do you read before you start? And then the second question is, how many times will you have gone through a book by the time you're ready to publish the audio file?
So this is wildly irresponsible, and I don't recommend this at all. I go in blind. Uh,
Okay.
I like to do that. Everything that I was taught, they said, "Oh, you should read the whole book before you start. You can make notes on what character does what." I don't like to do that.
Okay.
I'm kind of a busy guy, and I don't get as much time to actually sit and read as I'd like to. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm reading, I kind of need to be recording and getting it out the door.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Work
but
as you
what I
go type of thing. Yeah.
exactly, but what I find that is if I record myself reading something for the first time, it lends to a more organic kind of response. If a twist in the story were to happen, I might be able to, like, I don't know if you could pick up that inflection from a narrator's point of view. And I mean, you're not supposed to respond to the story vocally by any means, but I like to just be like, oh, okay, wow, that happened. So I don't like to see it coming,
Fair.
if that
Okay.
makes any sense.
I
I
think
like
it
to,
does. Yeah.
for like character mapping and things like that, if there are context clues, oh, this guy, he's from Mobile, Alabama. Okay, well then maybe a little bit of a draw, or an author might be so kind as to send a little chart or like a little list of here are all the characters. This is how I want them to sound. That's best case scenario.
Okay.
Or they say you have free reign. That's even better.
I was going to say,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, that's generally how I go. Seat of my pants. Don't recommend it. Goes against everything the professionals teach you,
Yeah.
but it makes it so much more fun and a little more organic in my eyes.
Yeah. You know what? Again, I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I can tell you that yours, if your technique is different than, say, the other 50 or so I've listened to over the last couple of years, it doesn't show. I mean, it sounds, yeah, it sounds just as good. If I can say that, it sounds just as good as a Stephen King novel that I listened to last week. Right? It's
Oh
yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
well,
no,
thank you.
yeah,
That's
no
music
worries.
to my ears. And if
Good.
you can get Mr. King to shoot me an email, that'd be even better.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I wish. So pantsing, we call it pantsing in writing, right? You've probably heard the term pantser before, plotter, pantser.
mm,
So you're a pantser in the audiobook world, which is pretty cool. I don't plot anything. I don't plan anything. I'm a pantser. I sit down and write, and whatever comes, comes. So I appreciate how you would want to do it that way.
that's a little strange too, because in hindsight, I plan every other aspect of my life meticulously.
Is that true?
I live 24/7, 365 inside of my own head, to my
Okay.
own detriment. So to take this wild approach to my bread and butter is a little bizarre. I've
Hmm.
never really come to that realization before. So thank you for opening my eyes to
Yeah,
that.
no worries. Well, I
Maybe I
wouldn't
should
change a
seek
thing.
help.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't change a thing. See, I've only listened to one of your audiobooks thus far, but I wouldn't change a thing, man. Yeah, worked for me.
I
So
appreciate that very much. Thank
yeah,
you.
you bet. So how many times do you read a book during the process?
Uh, well, if it's one that I really love, might go back and read it again just for pleasure after
Oh,
the
okay.
actual work is done.
Yeah.
During the process, again, it's kind of one and done.
Wow.
You start, you record, you just kind of brute force through it. That
Yeah.
sounds really sloppy and messy. That's not what I mean. You just you just go. I don't think
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
that much.
Editing fixes anything that
Oh
needs to be
goodness,
fixed,
yes,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
goodness, yes. The editing, if it were live, we'd be in big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
editing is for how much it kind of stinks to have to do. It's really good.
That process must be tough, though. So, I mean, okay, so you read through, you record, and now
hmm
you're happy with it. Well, first of all, will you listen back before you submit it to ACX or submit it to the author?
So as I'm editing, I just
Yeah.
make sure that, um, I mean, that would be incredibly time consuming if I did have
Yes.
to actually listen back. Sometimes I will take little clips, like if I'm cooking in the kitchen, I'll just be like, I'm going to pop this on, make sure that I didn't miss anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm sick and tired of hearing
Hearing yourself.
myself.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
wife certainly is. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, she's got to deal with this. We both work from home. So
Oh, okay.
we see a lot of each other and we hear a lot of each other. We're on different floors. I'm in the basement and she's on the top floor. We try not to get in each other's way. But back to your question, yeah, it's very minimal. And if I were to miss something, which is hopefully rare, but it
Yeah.
happens, we're human,
Sure.
the
It has
author
to.
hopefully catches it and points that out,
Okay.
especially if there's an egregious mistake.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I appreciate the time that would be involved in listening to it again and again. So when editing comes around, author Leonard says to you, "Oh, minute 35 and 22 seconds." You'll
Mhm.
just thumb through, you'll obviously go to that spot, listen, find it in the book and then re-record if you need to be. Is that kind of how you do it?
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah,
the beauty of it. They get so specific. You get your chapter and you get your timestamp and you go, "Yep, that's goofy. I'm going to go back and make
just
sure
find
that
it in
that
the book.
sounds
Yeah.
good."
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right. So I know the answer to this question, but I'll just let you elaborate a little bit more. I know you've taken some classes, you did a course.
Mhm.
Um, have you done acting over and above voice acting and narration? Have you done acting at all? Because a lot of people learn how to use their voice through acting. Did you do it in high school, or have you done any since?
So I am 34 years old, going on 35, and
Yeah.
the last acting class I took would be junior high school drama class. So
Okay.
probably not for a good 20 years.
Can't really
um,
say it helps you a whole pile.
I mean, you should. For those of you who are aspiring voice actors, the key word is actor. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I do highly recommend that you take acting classes. Figuring it out in the shower or in the car, that's one way to go, but it's not the same.
Well, I think some people are natural too, though. I can just hear passion in your voice just when we're just talking. I'm just asking you some general questions. So I think some people are natural actors,
Oh,
where I think you
goodness.
probably fall. Yeah, but I was just curious if you were back in the day, because I mean, a lot of us have done drama in high schools where we dabble at least, right? So
Well, in hindsight, if I could go back,
yeah.
I would take many acting classes. It might be fun to pursue that as a bit of a career or a hobby.
Hmm.
Yeah, the good old days.
Okay, I don't know if there's a technique, and I mean, I'm gonna ask the question, and if you say no, Keith, there isn't, then that's good to know.
Okay.
Multiple characters. How do you narrate? You're switching from character to character, male to female, on and on. How do you do that so effectively?
Oh
Is there
gosh.
is there something is there something that you've learned in your course, or is that just something you've learned to do as you go?
There's a cruise control to it, an autopilot where
Yeah.
the less you think about it, the better. Um,
Oh, okay.
you just kind
Yeah.
of flick a switch. Uh, you see it coming. Um, Hopefully, the author is talented enough to differentiate who's speaking. That's been a problem sometimes. Uh, Writing styles.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
something else.
to go back to the coaching I took, I was very worried about developing female characters because you might say, well, boy, your register might not lend well to that. And I would be inclined to agree, Keith. um, so they said, well, if you're going to voice a female character, don't get cartoony with it. Don't be Minnie Mouse. Um,
Right, right.
just soften your delivery and maybe heighten it just ever so slightly because you can't ever truly be something that you're not.
Yeah.
So switching the characters on the fly, and in Emery's wonderful book, there were so many characters of different nationalities with different
Mm,
accents.
yes, yeah.
I do find that it helps to kind of write things down. This character happens to be an Irish druid. This character happens to be an Icelandic man. This person's from Nepal. Good Lord, what does somebody from Nepal sound like? Hop on
Right.
YouTube, because that's not a huge demographic in the world of characters usually.
Yeah.
So you get those together, you kind of workshop those off mic, and just practice switching back and forth, and hopefully if it sounds seamless, then you've done something right. And then you've got your normal, regular narrator voice. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I again, a chooser of the slain. I know there were a lot of characters, and
certainly
um,
a menagerie.
you seem to bring them all to life, and you don't think about it when you're listening to it. But I obviously thought more about this book, knowing that you were going to guest on the show. I was like, oh yeah, when he's doing the female character, I know it's a female. You brought him to life as female, so it's a skill. I don't know how you do it, but yeah, wow,
I definitely appreciate that because, yeah, when you're unsure and you're insecure about something and you're sitting in this closet To be able to hear somebody from the outside world say, "Hey, don't worry about it. You did it all right."
Yeah.
That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good. And I'm sure you'll hear it more often as you talk to others. I mean, I know Emery spoke very highly. As a matter of fact, I mean, she was the one who said, "Oh, you really need to talk to Chris." And because I asked her a little bit off mic about the whole process of audiobooks, because I'm so keen to learn about that side of the industry as well. And she spoke so highly of you. So that's when she told me that you guys met for dinner. She
Yeah.
said, when we sit down, and he's like, boom, your voice is not like you look. And, but she spoke so highly of you.
Oh, she's too kind, and I have nothing but good things to say about her as well. Her
Yeah, she's
project
fabulous.
is has been one of my favorites to ever work on. So yeah, go buy that book. Go listen to that book if you can. Chooser of the
Absolutely.
Slain, E.S. Oliver. Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Yeah. And you're going to be recording her next one as well. Is that correct?
That's what I
We don't
understand.
have the timeline yet, but yeah, I know she did mention that that will be happening.
Hey, when it comes, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
see where the story goes. This is going to be an incredible series. Next, I'm going to be able to mess around with Central American mythology,
Right.
Mesoamerica. It's going to be a challenge, but I welcome it, and I can't wait to get started.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to hear it myself. So you say you have one in check right now, a book that you're just waiting quality control. You said.
Indeed.
Uh, are you working on anything else right now? Are you narrating another or any other?
Funny timing. So today is Sunday. I just finished a windfall of projects as of Friday.
Oh
Um,
wow,
I was working
weekend
on,
off.
yeah, I get the weekend off. I was working on 4 at the same time, 3 nonfiction and
Wow.
1 fantasy fiction. So one is in audio quality control, and then the
Yeah.
other 3 are all by the same author. And he is reviewing those himself on his
Perfect.
own
Okay.
timeline. So once he
Yeah.
gives that the okay, it'll go into audio quality control.
I
So
see.
right now,
So
plate's empty.
oh, good for you. Well, maybe not good for you. I guess we all want to be busy, but you need a break too. Four at one time. Goodness, you got to be bouncing characters and bouncing from voice to voice and
You sure do.
different headspace all the time, right?
I was lucky that 3 of them were nonfiction. So I didn't, not a lot of acting, very straightforward.
I guess, yeah.
Uh, Conversational, as a matter of fact. This was
Okay.
a instructional guide on how to break into the field of private investigation,
Oh wow.
written by a PI out of Los Angeles. Very interesting, very informative,
Yeah.
too. So,
Cool.
yeah, you do everything in this field. There's so many
Absolutely.
genres, and that was my first venture into nonfiction. Considerably less challenging, I would say.
I would think because you're reading but not acting.
Yes,
So yeah,
but you still try to zhuzh it up a little bit and make it fun.
sure. Okay.
Not to say that it was dry by any means. Private investigation, a very fascinating field. So
I imagine. Yeah, I imagine it is. You kind of got into it a little bit, but how do I, as an author, hire you? Like, so I reach out, I say, "Hey, Chris, I want you to do my book. What do we do?"
well, there's a multitude of things you could do. If you had me in mind, or you heard through the grapevine that I'm out there, you could Google me. You could go to my website, christurek.com. I have a weird last name, Turek, christurek.com. I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook, Chris Turek voiceover, Chris Turek VO. Or you can go on to ACX, which is a buffet of narrators.
Mm-hmm.
And you could literally go profile by profile as if this were a dating app and listen to their samples that they've uploaded, just various excerpts of books that they've either worked on or that's laying around the house. I like to upload those so that people can hear how you sound, your range,
Different. Yeah.
your style. You could do that. And if you find one, you could reach out to them. You could send them a message, or you could right off the bat just send them an offer. You say, hey, I want you. Here's my offer. Please work for me. And
Wow.
it's very, very easy in that regard. Or you could actually just hold auditions.
Okay.
And you could do all of this at the same time. You could say, my book is open for auditions. Come try out. That's the most daunting and my least favorite way to go about
I
it.
would think that would be the least favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little cold.
For me, I'm not that guy as an author. And maybe when I'm done and finished and ready to get into having somebody read my book, maybe I'll be different minded, but I don't think I will. I can't see me having people audition. I think I would rather choose either a voice or somebody in the genre that I like.
Yeah.
And I could almost see my books being one narrator, I would think.
Some people,
Comfort level.
yeah, you develop a rapport, and that's just kind of image is the wrong word, but it's the sound that people conjure up when they think of your audiobook. Though
Yeah.
that's the guy that does this guy's books. So
Yeah.
um, I like Stephen King's rotating uh, roster of narrators.
Yeah.
The biggest authors, they always have a gaggle of celebrities they can fall back
Of
on.
course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you and I are not quite at that level, but that's okay.
One day.
Someday. So I will put a link to your website on the Brewing Fiction website. If anybody out there is listening and they frequent my website, they can find yours. But again, it's Chris Turek, Turek.com. Chris with a CH, I guess. Anything else you'd like to say? Anything else you'd like to throw out to our listeners before we sign off?
Oh gosh. Once again, please go to audible.com. Go and buy Chooser of the Slain. Wonderful book, wonderful author. You won't regret it. And feel free to peruse any other books I may have narrated on there, if you want. I won't stop you. So that's about it. Visit my website, christurek.com. Check me out on social media if you're really bored. So yeah.
We'll find you. Somebody will find you. On Audible, sorry, when you just said something flashed in my head here. So
Sure.
I can go on Audible and search your books as the narrator. Is that right? Like I've gone on Audible and searched for genre, or I'll search an author.
Yeah.
But can I search by you
I
as a
believe you
narrator?
can.
Interesting.
So yeah, ACX and Audible, ACX is kind of like the backstage aspect of it.
Right.
The inner workings, that's where I spend most of my time. But on the user side of things, on Audible, I think you can search out particular authors and narrators. I
Interesting.
may be wrong. Don't quote me on that. If all else fails, Google's your best friend. You could just say Chris Turek Audible, and it'll just do a laundry list of everything I've ever worked on. That works too.
There you go. Cool. I'll do that after we disconnect here just for fun. I'll find out exactly how it works.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Chris, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing that information with me. I know it's a daunting thought of having somebody read your book for me as a new writer. So again, a lot of my listeners are new writers, aspiring authors. You seem to come across as a guy who would take pride and, like you said, nurture the project. So maybe we'll work together one day. But I appreciate you coming on, sharing your expertise, and I hope that somebody who listens will reach out to you.
I appreciate you having me. This was so much fun, and I hope it wasn't too dry. That's all.
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Well, it was great to meet you too, by the way.
You as well, Chris. You know what? It's a pleasure, and we'll stay in touch. Hopefully we can do this again maybe down the road, and hey, if all goes well, maybe we'll work together as well.
I'd like that very much. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.